think we can get started with Lilit and Roupen's presentation about how they use ProtoPie at Picsart. I will stop my share.
Yep.
So you can share your screen.
Yeah. We are product designers from Picsart, and for those who don't know, Picsart is a photo and video editing creative platform where users can also share their work with Picsart community. Yeah.
Can you guys share your screen? Can you try sharing?
We're sharing, but it should be black right now, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. So yeah, as you said, we are from Picsart, and we're actually going to kick it off with a very familiar scene to you as designers, if there are designers in this call. So we're going to play it as me being a designer and Lilit as a developer. So, okay, Lilit, what we're going to do now, I'm trying to explain you the new component that we have for Picsart, which is actually the slider, slider which comes with a line and a circle in the center. And when you drag this circle, there's a selection part which moves with your finger and makes the selection like visible for the user. And we have a title about that and the value on the right side. So whenever I move this circle, the value changes with the circle, and the circle gets bigger to just hint the user that I'm touching that.
So how much will the circle
So
get?
We're planning to scale it up by 4 to 8 pixels, but we're not sure about it. And other than that, by the way, we have 2 buttons at the right and the left of the slider, which actually affect the slider's behavior. So when I press on the plus, it changes on the slider.
So when tapping on the button, should it have some opacity or something like that?
Well, we're not adding an opacity, but we're changing the color of it to the second color that we have the second.
So what are the colors?
Okay, let's do this another way. So what if I show you this? So I was talking about this circle in the middle. When you move it, you have this value changing and the 2 buttons on the right and the left. So as you can see, we're adding a border and scaling it up. And when I double tap on the slider, it cuts to the default value of it, which we can decide what it should be. Okay.
Yeah, you should have shown me soon.
Okay, that's good. So we're done with this explanation of the new component that you have at Picsart.
So imagine if the designer showed the prototype sooner, it will save so much time if they instead of trying to explain everything in detail, they will show just a prototype made with ProtoPie. And there is a myth going on that making a prototype takes longer and it takes a lot of time of the designer. But as you have seen, showing just a prototype was self-explanatory, and it left less space for error. And what other benefits are there if you do prototyping? So except speeding up the process, it also takes less effort and leaves room for less error. And also it boosts the communication between designer and the stakeholders, developers, clients, and also you can get a constructive feedback when you show the prototype. And also it boosts a lot of creative ideas, as when you create a prototype, it makes your product tangible, and you can see what errors there are, and you can improve it.
Yeah. So why we chose ProtoPie as a tool for us for making prototypes? So basically, when we started with ProtoPie, we realized that the flexibility and the visibility that we have in ProtoPie in making interactions and complex flows is really it's giving some good results for us. So prototyping allows these complex and interactions and flows to come to real life experience. So we're getting a smooth result in high fidelity prototypes, which is really like very similar to the real product that we have. So the detailed control that we have on the interactions and the linking between the components and how they affect on each other is really incredible in ProtoPie. So, and another very important thing was like the handoff process for development, like when you have these complex interactions and the links between each other. So it gets more complex to hand it off to developers and the engineering team. So with ProtoPie, by using the recipe that they automatically create for you in the interactions. So it really helped our developers and us in the communication between these two different disciplines, let's say. So, but as we know, like any other platform, ProtoPie has its challenges. For us, like the main challenge was the learning curve, of course. But here again, we have good news for you, because since ProtoPie is very similar in its UI and interface and its logic to other design tools, so you get started at a level if you have a knowledge of other design tools like, I don't know, Figma, or I don't know, even Photoshop can help in this place, I could say. So you get started from a stage and you're actually not on the 0 point. So you get started from somewhere and it seems like more easier to you to accelerate from that point.
Yeah, and just like any other platform, ProtoPie has its specialties. So there are some specific features that only ProtoPie has. So you will spend a little more time to understand how those features work. But the good news is that there are plenty of information and tutorials on the internet and also on ProtoPie website and YouTube channel. So you can learn from there, and after you learn all of these tools and master them, you can become faster, and you can make prototyping easier.
Yeah. So, okay, why not to head to the ProtoPie itself in its player? We're going to share with you a project that we worked on at Picsart. So it's basically a feature that we had and we needed to update it. So what you're seeing now, you can see it still on your phones, but we're sharing it with you. So what we were planning to have here was the color wheel, the color picker tool that we have. We wanted to change it. And while we were working on the flows and we had some very basic prototypes with other tools. So the problem there was that we wanted to user test it and we wanted to feel the exact same experience when the user is trying to choose the color. So with other softwares and platforms and limitations that they have, we weren't able to get that result. So the other way that we could have done this is like to have a build, developed one, where we can test it. But as you know, like it can take much more time than we can make a prototype. So we started using ProtoPie for this. And the results we got were really like so similar to the thing that we wanted to make. I'm just moving this here. Okay. So what we made is actually, we made this color wheel, this color spectrum, an interactive one, which interacts with this slider, which is the hue slider, which changes the color here and some other places I will be showing you in a bit. And we made this like the color tokens, the preset colors that we have interactive also, so that you can feel the whole real experience in the app. So everything here is interactive. And as you can see, as I'm changing anything on the colors, everything is changing. Like the selection that I have here, the new color that I'm choosing with to compare it with the old one. When I'm moving the hue slider, the spectrum is changing in colors. And here the new token that is created is also changing with it. So everything is actually linked together. So I know you can imagine now, if you're not a ProtoPie user, how hard this, it's almost impossible on any other like prototyping tool. So it was really took some time from us, but like we were really dedicated to this because we know what value it should bring to us when we user test it and have this ProtoPie really functional. So it was really exciting to see the results that we have. Like I'm even using it with like thinking of it as a real product now. So everything is really interactive and you can switch between them and link components to each other. When I'm saying to link components to each other, it's actually like when you see this screen, it could seem more complex than it is, because you see a slider moving, you see a spectrum moving, you see here tokens being selected, something is adding. So in fact, it's more simple than that, because every component in this screen is the component itself, and the interaction for this slider, for example, is made in a separate file alone and before. So actually, we had all the sliders that we use in Picsart made like inside ProtoPie again, but they are just like any other platform where you have components and you just reuse them in your designs. We again have them like with the interactions on ProtoPie. So we actually simply just drag this component into that screen and use it. So the only thing that remains to you is like to link these components together and just make the most out of it. So speaking of developers, so when we say how developers accepted ProtoPie and looked into it. So when I was talking about the recipes, it's really a very simple process. So when you already have the prototype here, you just press on the record button here and you record your actions. So let's say I want to explain to the developer how this thumb of the slider is moving and what interactions it's having. So I just press on the record and I do this, okay? Let's see the example on this one actually. So I do this and do some taps on the plus button, then the minus, and then double click maybe. So what it gives me, ProtoPie, is this list. It's actually a recipe. So when the developer gets this and presses on the play button, it sees my mouse moving, and with every interaction being done on the screen, he actually sees the interactions like the scaling up size, the curve, the animation is happening, the duration of it, like which layer is interacting with my tab and so on. So every little detail in this prototype that we made is visible here for the developers. And if you can see on the right panel here, like everything is in, like everything the developer needs is written there. So this really helped us. So what ProtoPie looks in this project from the inside. So this is the actual file for the prototype. So when I say we were linking things together, actually there are some features in ProtoPie that give you really flexibility to make this stuff, which are, I just go on over them very quickly because they are really like, you have to learn them. You have to watch tutorials, read the articles that ProtoPie like gives. So, but the exciting part is when you start learning and using them and you see the results, you're going to be addicted to it. So we have these variables, for example, which I can like have the most limitation that we face in other prototyping tools is like we have to tell the platform to every click what should happen. In ProtoPie, that's not the case. So for example, when I say I'm moving this slider and this color is changing, so I'm not telling him at every point what to show here. So I just tell him like, when I'm moving this slider, there's a new color here that is being created. The new color is actually being picked from the background of the slider and being transferred to this background. So I'm not doing anything here. I had this slider interactable and this color spectrum. So here, I brought these two components and told ProtoPie that I want this slider to control the color of this background, and it's done. So I'm talking of it as very simple process, but yeah, it's a bit complicated. Actually, you have to be like, you have to have knowledge about these variables and how formulas work. That's something like you need this time to learn, but once you get there, it's really easy and like, you will definitely see the value in it. So yeah, I think that's all from us. Like, yeah, if you have any questions, let us know. Oh, by the way, one more thing. So basically, one other thing that we love in ProtoPie, that, for example, this spectrum that you see, we have it made in 4 different ways. So the structure of this component, we have it in 4 different ways. So you can really, like, when we say it boosts your creativity, like you can never imagine that, why should I need the same component in 4 different ways? But we made it that way because like, when we were like making the whole prototype, the whole flow, we realized some bugs in it, and we kept on updating the component and like getting better.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can do it anything in different ways by using any tool, any feature in ProtoPie.
And it like creating a couple of versions also helps to test them very quickly. Yep.
Yeah, that's all from our side.
Thank you so much, Lilit and Roupen. That was great. And yeah, thank you for creating such a creative and funny presentation in the beginning. Okay, like we promised, we do have a second Q&A session. So there was a question in the Q&A that Pratik also answered, and that I wanted you to go over. So the question was, after designing all the static screens in Figma and exporting them to ProtoPie, you realize the interaction can be done differently. Sometimes I think it's easier to start prototyping first. Did this ever happen to you? How do you handle design changes? Thank you and great presentation. So if you go to the Q&A, it's one of the answered questions. I'm curious to hear your answer to this.
Yeah, I think I can start. When we were working on ProtoPie, there was not a function to export from Figma to ProtoPie. So we were creating everything from scratch in the ProtoPie. So we were just like copying screens and pasting it there. But now that we have now that we can export all interactions from Figma to ProtoPie, it's actually like made our life easier. So I think we now prefer to export everything from Figma and then do some adjustments rather than start from the scratch in ProtoPie.
Yeah, and actually, like if we're talking about prototyping before designing the screens, I mean, it all depends on how you're prototyping and how you're designing. Because yeah, maybe you can do it like backwards, but to do that, I think you need to have the content to make it. Like as I mentioned, if you have all the components ready and it's not complete new screen, yeah, definitely you can start with prototyping it at first. Like even you don't need to design a screen if it's something like if your product is really at that point, like when you have a design system, a library, components interacting. So yeah, definitely you can make it. I personally didn't make it yet, like, but yeah, I think it's something possible. Yeah.
Amazing. We have some questions in the chat box actually. So Hristo Yordanov is asking a question about the new collection prototype shown in terms of programming, scripting, how challenging it was to develop the interaction.
Oh, so if I get the question right, it's more about the part where we're handoffing it to development, right? Yeah. So basically, again, it's all like if you plan it from the beginning, it gets easier. So as I said, if you have like these phases of like having a component first, having a slider first, and then another slider, and then another button, let's say. So when you have this like chop the prototype to parts, then it's way easier for both, for the designers and developers. So if we talk about our experience with developers in Picsart, like they were really excited to have this recipe form. Actually, we haven't been using this in every project, like to be honest with you, but in the most complex ones where we have new interactions, especially, yeah, like the features that we have here are really helping them.
Got it. Mohammed is also asking in the chat, how do you visualize and demonstrate novel type of interactions, even if they're not technically possible yet?
Even if they're not technically possible.
So actually, when we start designing, we make sure to talk to developers during the process to make sure that everything is like possible to do, and yeah, make sure that there are no technical constraints. But if there are like some novice things that we want to have, like improvements or something that we want developers to do something new, even though there are some technical limitations. We just like try, I think the most important part is the communication with the developers. So make sure that they are okay to work on that, to spend some time or to like learn more how they can like overcome those technical issues and make it possible. But for the design side, I think with ProtoPie, it's really easy to make something new, and like I think more it's on the development part.
Yeah, and another example, like I had this experience where there was a micro interaction actually, and not a flow problem. Micro animation, it was on a button, the icon was animating, and it was not impossible, but it like needs so much time to implement it, like code side. So what I did in that case was I created the Lottie animation file with After Effects. That's completely different story. Yeah, but the good thing here is, again, like you can use that Lottie file again in ProtoPie. So we actually imported it to ProtoPie and like merged it to the flow, and we hand it over as a Lottie file, the animation itself.
Awesome. I hope this answers your questions. We have 2 more questions, and I think, yeah, we do have time to cover them both. So question for Lilit and Roupen. Is every designer in your team involved in the prototyping process, or do you have a dedicated role for an interaction designer?
Well, actually at Picsart, the design team is really big and international. So I can't give you information like, I'm not sure about it 100%, but as I know, yeah, everyone does prototyping, but if everyone uses ProtoPie, I can't say it for sure, but like I can tell that maybe 50% definitely does use. So prototyping is something, yes, every designer at Picsart does, and it actually helps us in our product lifecycle. Yeah, if the question was for prototyping, but for ProtoPie, yeah, maybe not everyone still is using, but we're on the way.
Yeah, we actually do not have a dedicated person who does prototyping, but like there are a lot of people that like their hobbies like prototyping and also using ProtoPie, and we try to help each other and like to get there where we want. So a lot of times it's a collaborative like work.
Yeah, and for interaction designers itself, no, we don't have interaction designers at Picsart, but the design system team that is responsible for the components themselves, like the components that we know already contain interactions, they're made from them. Yeah.
Thank you. And one last question. It's kind of related to the whole learning process at Picsart. How did you learn ProtoPie, and how do you onboard new designers in your team to use ProtoPie?
Well, me personally, I learned ProtoPie completely from scratch from the articles that are available on the website. Like even the tutorials on YouTube didn't help that much as the articles themselves, because they're really detailed and well presented, and you can see examples and everything. Of course, I watched tutorials too much, and I even took a course on Udemy, I think. Yeah, that helped also, but for me, like the main source of truth was the articles themselves. So I think now we have some updates on the website too, like there's a school part and some videos, which are like, I think way more easier to learn from. Yeah, Lil, I don't know if you have different ways.
I also learned from scratch. Yeah, I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials and also the help section of the ProtoPie website helped a lot for like interactions, how each interaction works. And also a lot of my colleagues helped me like with questions, and my advice for those who want to learn will be to make a lot of prototypes. So as much as you can, you can do it like for every project, you can do a prototype, even like if you have separate time, you can try even prototyping other apps, for example, some apps that you like or websites, just to practice a lot. And when you have questions, you can go to the help section and find the answer to your questions.
Yeah, and also try to start with small things. To
like
make interactions, triggers, see how things work together. Like, don't try to prototype a complete flow or a screen at first. So just try small things to see how the ProtoPie itself works and how interactions are done.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So yeah, Muhammad is asking, okay, that's great, but what if you want to push the boundaries? How useful is ProtoPie in at least imagining new ways of completing tasks? In the chat box.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what push the boundaries means. So we think like by using ProtoPie, we're already pushing the boundaries in prototyping. So like by pushing boundaries, for example, like we have prototypes where we're using even the haptics of the phone. If we're talking about, for example, mobile phones, we're using the haptics for the slider, for example. So I think that's something pushing the boundaries, because it's really interactable and like you're getting the real experience that you expect to do on the real app. So
yeah, it's like the experience is similar to developing, because it's really flexible, and if you learn all of the tools, you can really create whatever like your mind wants you to create.
If you answered the question, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So Muhammad was talking more in terms of technicality, like how difficult it is to implement.
Yeah, I think it's more like it depends on the developers, like if they're eager to spend time and resources, or if the project does not have like time limitations or technical constraints. So it's more depends on the team. If the team wants to go for more like futuristic approach and spend more time on some things that are difficult to implement but are better, they can do that, and ProtoPie gives you all the tools to do that.
Thank you, Muhammad. I hope these clarifications are good enough. Thank you, Lilit, and thank you, Roupen. Let's see. Okay, so I will have one more. Roupen, I was wondering if you could share, I'm not sure if you can share the link, the cloud link to the Pi that you showed earlier. I'm not sure if you can do that.
Yeah, actually, I can't do it right now, but I can do my best to post it on ProtoPie. I think we have a place where you can share with your project.
Okay, or just
publish
because I know someone was asking, and yeah, we will try to get some pies and maybe share them in an article, or it will be made available anyway.